Hi, welcome to the Kitchen Shrink, where real talk meets real life. We're Kat and Cal, two therapists helping you make sense of relationships, emotions, and everything in between. Pull up a chair. Let's sort through it together.
Hey, everybody. Today is going to be a heavy topic, but we are excited to dig in. Here's our question from our listener. How do you deal with a toxic mother-in-law who plays her adult children against each other, including in-laws and grandkids? She has no clue the damage she's caused in our family. It feels like our family has been split into sides. The pain she has caused my husband has been incredibly hard to witness. Not only the pain of the way she treats him, but the pain of having to cut her out of our lives when some of the other people don't understand why we're doing this. As a mother myself, I cannot understand how she can treat my husband and others like this. She tries to make everyone else look like the bad guy. She has never once had accountability. Anytime we bring something up to her about her behavior, she completely flips everything and blames us for it. We've decided to distance ourselves from her, which has been painful and freeing all at once. Are we doing the right thing? Oh, yeah, buckle up, Jerry, here, guys, right? So I think today's question is about a toxic mother in law, but I think what our listener is really asking for is how do you love someone who continues to hurt your family? And when do boundaries become healthier than continued access?
And this is really tough because this isn't her mother. This is her husband's mother.
Right.
This is her mother-in-law.
Mother-in-law.
And
Yeah.
so it's a very difficult thing to be a change agent in a family that isn't yours by biological connection.
Right.
Because you stand to be the villainized one in the
Right.
situation by calling out behavior that is
Oh, boy.
inappropriate or
Yeah.
unacceptable.
Yeah, that's maybe not seen the same by your partner.
Well, and maybe over time he is starting to see that
Yes,
this is an
that's
issue.
yeah,
Hopefully she's
exactly.
not convincing
Right.
him.
Well, yes. What's the whole thing like? I can say something bad about one of my family members, but
But
you
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 can't.
you
You
better
better
not.
not.
Even if I know it's true, you better not say it. So
Some things are off limits.
yeah, I would probably use this wait to the end, but I'm going to say, protect your marriage first and foremost, and protect your family when it comes to this, because it's, as we get into this, it sounds like also there's some sides being picked, right? And so,
And
I
be
mean,
patient with your partner too, because if they grew up in this
yes,
dynamic, which I'm obviously she is because they're coming to this conclusion together, but
right.
for other people who aren't as far along, who might be seeing patterns that feel toxic or inappropriate,
Mm-hmm.
remember that your partner grew up in this cycle. And so, kind of forcing them to pick sides can damage your
Your own
relationship,
relationship, yeah,
helping them to see or something that might be unseen at this point because they're
right.
used to it is
Yeah.
it can take some time and some patience
Yes.
and not forcing your perspective just because you see it.
Right. Yeah. Go easy and be gentle. So, all families, there's disagreement all the time, right? But the struggle because this becomes when one person refuses accountability and everybody else has learned to kind of organize themselves around that person. I see that a lot, right? Like one person does something and then, boy, it's like a trickle down effect. Everybody else does something. So there is like we talk about cycles between two people. There is like a family cycle going on here.
For sure.
Like,
Family systems
yeah,
is
it's,
real and people function within that system and they have done it for much much longer than the time that they've known their partner.
absolutely. I think, to frame it, it's most likely a family system that's been organized around fear, control, and emotional insecurity. That's kind of what I'm guessing for here, especially the controlling piece and the fearing piece. If I do this, she's going to do that. So then we all kind of shrink ourselves and become somebody else so we don't make her mad.
Yeah, it's almost like a game of chess is kind of what it sounds like, where
Yes.
everyone's getting pitted against each other. There's a lot of
Right.
calculated sort of behavior that's happening in order for this dynamic to continue.
I think too, I'm hearing two emotions, right? The deep sadness and relief. You can have two truths around this. They can exist together. And I think like the deeper pain, the listener says the pain she's caused my husband has been incredibly hard to witness. That's huge.
And I appreciate that because she's not saying I don't like how my mother-in-law treats me. She's saying I look at what she's doing to my partner, the person I
Right.
love, her son,
Right.
and that's just really really hard for me to watch. And
Yeah.
that is one way to know that setting boundaries is well-intentioned, because it's not just, I don't like how my mother-in-law treats me. It's not
Right.
personalized. It's looking at the whole system and saying, I see negative impact of this both on
Mm-hmm.
me, my partner, and our children.
Right. Yep. And then the other part is we talked about boundaries is setting them and then not feeling bad about those. Make sure that you reassure yourself every time that this is necessary to protect myself and my family. So I think, it sounds like he's not just losing a relationship with his mom, but he's grieving the mom he's always hoped that she'd become. And that's a different kind of grief. I wanted to talk about a couple of things today. I mean, ambiguous loss is when someone is physically here, they're still on this earth, but they're emotionally unavailable. That can be almost more painful, I hear from clients, than if they lose that person to death, and they're no longer on this earth. When they're still here, oh man, but they either can't or they won't provide what you deeply need, like the love and validation and especially accountability. There's really no clear ending, and that grief can linger on and be just super hard to process. Every time there's a family event, you might have another huge ambush or a big tidal wave of grief around who you wished your mom could have been and who you wish she could be for you and for your kids. That's really packed. There's a lot going on in there.
And it's so hard with ambiguous loss, because typically a person will try to bring their concerns to the other person, hoping to be seen, heard, validated, and understood, and then it doesn't
It
happen.
doesn't
And so
happen.
it's like,
Yeah.
also just having understanding for people who really struggle. We don't want to villainize anybody for how they're
Right.
treating us. What we do want to understand is everybody has a history,
Right.
and your parents can love you so much and be limited in their capacity. This is also true in partnership. Your partner can genuinely care about you, but be limited in capacity. Capacity is different than care or love. It's just that we don't always have the tools. And if we don't have the tools, then when someone brings something to us, we can't meet it. Not and so the boundaries become important, because boundaries aren't about changing somebody else. They're about what we need in order to be safe inside of ourselves and our relationships. And so it isn't about cutting off a parent because they're a terrible person and they shouldn't treat you like this and this is toxic. While that's all true, the true motivation is, this hurts and this is not okay and it's not changing. And when given the opportunity, she did not show that she was capable of that. And that's why the boundary is necessary, because her capacity cannot meet the level of need of this relationship.
Oh, Kat, I feel like we should just drop the mic and call it a day.
All
You
right.
got it,
Thanks for
girl.
joining us
We'll see
today.
you around. See you next week. No, but for real, like
Yeah.
rewind that part and listen to it, because you just did a beautiful job at just framing so much of what's going on here. I mean, the ambiguous loss, she hit it too. It's like if you have a narcissistic parent or a spouse who is physically present but emotionally disconnected from you. You might have a loved one with dementia or addiction, right? I mean, a strange family member who's still alive, a parent who will never acknowledge the hurt they caused or offer the apology that you long for the most. I don't know with this one if it's a willingness or if it's a capability.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
regardless of what it does,
Right.
regardless, even if you
It
come
still
up with the
impacts
why,
us.
that should not change your response in having boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another term that I want to bring to you guys is disenfranchised grief, and I'm hearing this a little bit in this in the caller's question, because she says it almost feels like we're split into teams. So disenfranchised grief it's a grief that's not always recognized or validated by others. So she's saying, there's some split in the siblings, there's some split in the family. Sometimes people don't have any idea, or they just can't understand why you're grieving someone who's still alive, which can make your loss feel even more isolating, right? So disenfranchised grief is when that pain isn't always recognized or validated by others. And that can really put a complicated layer on your grief of all of this.
Especially because we are social beings who desire deep connection, and the biggest place we seek connection is through our families. And so
Right.
when our families disagree with a choice, it can really make us question ourselves,
Right.
as opposed to the system does deserve to be questioned. And
Right.
sometimes you become the helm of the ship, leading things in a different direction. It can take people a lot longer
Right.
to get on board with that, by seeing how your bravery to do the first step impacts the total outcome, and maybe they will follow suit later. It takes a lot of bravery to be the first person to go
Right.
through this disenfranchised grief.
Right. Yeah, it does. And that's a great point. And, we never know what keeps those other people in what we experienced as a really dysfunctional relationship, a
Yeah,
really
sometimes it's
unhealthy.
even just fear and
Yeah,
like you can't do that to mom, or
right.
she's older, or look what we did at the,
Mm-hmm.
it's this attachment to
Right,
it that
right.
makes you feel like we can't do that, we can't break that.
Yeah. So we never know and again, that's not yours to figure out, right? I say stay in your lane. It's their experience. You get to have yours. Those siblings may have completely different experiences
Mm-hmm.
with mom. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but we don't know. But for this one, we're going to assume that everyone gets their own experience with that person, and just because they don't agree or side with you doesn't mean that that's a healthy
That what you're
route or
doing is
yeah, it
wrong.
doesn't mean
Yeah.
what you're doing is wrong. You have to do what feels best for you and your family. So I mean, the deepest pain, this is like attachment injury too, right? Like the deepest pain isn't just what happened, it's also the realization that the person that he instinctively turned towards for comfort or connection isn't able to meet that need. That's so painful. I mean, healing often involves grieving that reality rather than continuing to hope they'll become someone they have consistently shown they cannot be. That's a
Yeah.
big, painful ouch right there. And the grief it's tricky and it's hard when they're still here. There's no funeral, there's no ritual. Oftentimes, this is the hard part, there's no closure because that person isn't going to give you what you long for the most because either they can't or they won't. So
And that's
it's,
a whole thing in relationships too. When there is no closure, it
mm,
is very hard for our brains to sit in trust of our decision because of cognitive dissonance. The
mm-hmm,
reason that we have the conversation is in hopes that there's closure, clarity, communication, increased
right,
connection, whatever.
yep,
When that does not happen because the other person does not meet us, there is an empty space there.
right,
That empty space doesn't mean we're doing something wrong, but it is very hard for our brains to sit in all the, well, maybe, what if, should I have, whatever.
right,
And so understand that being able to sit in this gap of did I make the right decision, it will feel like an unknown answer because there was no closure, and closure leaves cognitive dissonance. It's like
exactly.
one that you're living in two truths at the exact same time.
Ah.
It's very uncomfortable. It's very polarizing.
Right. And I think we think closure has to come from that person.
Yeah.
And you're setting yourself up for more pain. It's kind of like it's like the definition of insanity. If you keep looking for it and longing for it and asking or even begging for it, it's like trying to get bread from the hardware store. They don't have it. And each time
Mm-hmm.
you do that, at some point you realize, and that's maybe where they're at. I have to have boundaries here. She's not changing. There's no accountability. I've got to protect my heart and my family. That's a tough pill to swallow, but it's kind of that deep sadness and that freeing piece too. So I think something you mentioned, like oftentimes adult children fall into this trap of, if I just explain myself better. I mean, they maybe spent decades trying to do this. If I love her more, if I just say the right words, then maybe she'll understand. But guys, accountability requires willingness and capability. You can't reason someone into accountability if protecting themselves is more important than repairing relationships. Like, we don't know why she's doing this. I don't know why. Again, you can spend all day trying to figure it out. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
The why is, I'm in so much pain. And sometimes we have to give ourselves closure. If that person cannot or will not give it to us, we have to decide and give ourselves permission that the closure is me deciding to either walk away from this relationship or me putting really healthy boundaries in place. That
And
has
that's
to be
where,
your.
sorry,
No, go ahead.
that's where I'm glad that they have a partner in the situation, that they're
Mm-hmm.
married,
Mm-hmm.
because it can be a reminder, because it's normal that your nervous system will keep kind of like re-exploring the emptiness and be like, wait,
Right.
and needing to keep going back to like, why did we get
Right.
here? Let's
Yes.
create our own closure. Let's come back to
Right.
why we are where we are.
Yeah. And I mean, it says they said that it's sad, but also freeing. It's those two truths. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's one of your cues is if your distance creates more peace, that's really important information to pay attention to, right? I mean, boundaries aren't punishment, they're protection. So it's not about changing another person. It's about changing what you'll participate in, right? So that we say the boundaries aren't the walls to keep people out, they're doors that determine how people are allowed in. And you get to decide. I mean, I think when people come in and say, I don't know what to do, and they're at this point, I say, listen, there's like a spectrum here. 0 is I'm going to cut them out completely. 10 is I'm going to continue in this dysfunctional, painful relationship. There's a lot of numbers in there. Pick a 5, pick a 7. I mean, I never tell you what to pick. We just walk along in this journey and help you figure out what's best for you with
Mm-hmm.
those boundaries. There's really Yeah.
Yeah, especially because there's like a whole rising theme in therapy right now where therapists are getting blamed for cutting off relationships to family. And let's just be clear. I mean, I guess I can only speak for us, and we are
Right.
not your therapist. We are just two therapists, but
Right.
I can say that I've never told a client ever to do anything with their
Never.
lives.
Yeah, that's not our job.
Everything about therapy is about the client exploring what is in their best interest to help build better relationships in their life. And
Absolutely.
if something has come to the conclusion of distance is the right answer for that person, that deserves respect because the whether it's capacity, whether it's, lack
Yeah.
of ability, whatever,
Willingness, we don't know.
yeah, lack of willingness, that's what
Yeah.
I was looking for. Thank
Yeah.
you. It's their decision because the other person isn't meeting them. That makes it unhealthy because
Right.
relationships involve two people, three people, four people. In a family, it's a lot of people.
Right.
And so doing what's best for you is not always going to make the other person happy, but the other
Right.
person has the job to meet that person if they want to stay in connection, not be upset that there's a space or a distance. That
Right.
space or distance is because the person is saying, I can't force you to change and you don't have to.
Right.
But I also have to make sure that I'm taking care of me, and that's what a
Exactly.
boundary is for.
Absolutely. I think that's a beautiful way of putting it. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Do you have any other important parts on this one? I'm
No,
not
I
sure how we're
mean,
doing. I think we've nailed some big ones here. I mean, I think, healthy families, they don't avoid conflict. They repair, but repair requires humility and ownership. We talked about being curious, having empathy, and if only one person is doing all of that, the relationship cannot become healthy. And it's not because you're failing, it's because relationships require two participants. And if you're the only one that's doing the heavy lifting, the healthy work, and the other one is either incapable or unwilling, at some point you get to the point where you say, this is too painful. I've spent decades maybe trying to get this person to see me, to hear me, to validate me, to love me. Whether they're willing to or capable of, there's your question. And sadly, if there's a capability issue, we talked about narcissism, there's dementia, there's, addiction, all those things. And that doesn't it doesn't make that person a horrible person. It just means they don't have what it takes to be healthy in a relationship. And there's so much sadness around that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, basically, to wrap up today, for anybody who is in a situation like this, just remembering that if it is your partner and their family, that you are not pushing that partner to disconnect because you don't like what the family is doing, because that partner has been in that situation for a long time and they need to come alive to why these situations are harmful. You may see something that they don't see, and forcing your partner to choose between you and their family is always going to be unhealthy and bad for the relationship. If you see your partner struggling with something and you are like this couple, it sounds like, learning that the boundaries are needed, it's important to, remind your partner that of the why when there is that grief that they're experiencing.
Right. Validating and empathizing how hard this has been, and you're doing the right thing with boundaries.
Yep. And then remember that relationships are two-sided. So if you're at a place where you need distance as a boundary for yourself, it's because the other person isn't meeting you. And that is an appropriate reason to be able to say, I just need some space right now until both people can meet each other. And then also remember that lack of validation and experiencing grief does not mean that you are doing the wrong thing. Your family and others may not understand, or it may take them longer. And grief is a part of this process.
Absolutely.
So continue to rely on each other and strengthen each other through the process of setting new dynamics in a family that has been functioning this way for quite some time, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, remember, healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens one conversation at a time. We'll see you next week. Thanks for being here at the Kitchen Shrink. We're really glad you showed up today. Be kind to yourself and stay connected. We're Kat and Kel, and we're here for you. Real talk, real tools, real life.